Everybody, it's Sean from Shooty School. Welcome back to the Jacob and Darby interview series. This is the second video in a series, so if you missed the first one, check the description, click the link on the first episode and watch that one first, because right now we're simply going to pick up where we left off. So let's rock. How tedious is the process of recording the single hits of each instrument and articulation for the Big Stage EZX?
I found it really therapeutic. Like you definitely go off into another world and
Alex said the same thing.
You lose yourself. Yeah, man, it's so therapeutic. However, there are a couple of things like you hit a drum with the most resonance and that room was so big, you might be waiting a whole minute before you can hit the next drum for a sample. And, you suddenly think, I think we had to record drums at, 15 velocities?
It was more.
12, 15 each drum?
And
so
also I had to sit here and listen. Like when you thought it was over in the talkback, like not yet.
Not yet. Now. And I've got to sit there trying to hold my breath and not breathe and make any noise, because if I do, the sample is unusable.
That was my favorite part when I could say in the talkback, sorry, creaked. You creaked the drum stool or whatever. You have to go again.
You love saying that. I'd be like, no.
It was pretty hard on me, but I mean, I could sit down here in the control room.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. You were sitting down there drinking cups of tea, having coffee, stroking your dog, having a great time. And the worst thing, I'm gonna cut you off, right? So
He gets so angry.
So don't forget, I'm in this old ancient theatre from like the 1800s, completely locked in. They've turned the air conditioning off because we can't have any noise. It's the height of summer. It's midsummer in Sweden. Everyone's outside partying, drinking beer, and I'm in this room. And I can see these guys on a TV screen in front of me, joking around, taking phone calls, doing Facebook, doing Instagram. And I'm stuck there just going, bang. And then I just look up at them having so much fun, and I'm just like, oh no.
And then sometimes we lean over and like, 10 more, and then just keep
when they weren't, but all joking aside, I wouldn't use the word tedious. Something I really hate when you see like descriptions of manufacturing of stuff and they go, we painstakingly did this, it was so tedious. That to me suggests people didn't enjoy what they were doing and didn't like it. And so I didn't find it tedious at all. It was difficult.
That's good to hear, because I don't want like bad vibes and mojo coming through all these samples, but I assumed it was painstaking labor.
No. It takes time, but it's a job to do. But I think if you classify something as being tedious or painstaking, you're the wrong person for the job. Our plan was to try and make the best pack Toon Tracks had so far.
For me, it took a lot of effort in one way, but as Darby said, I didn't have to worry about making a sound, or I could just go up for a coffee or whatever. But I had to be aware of what came through the microphones, and are the files all there, and is something happening with what we're doing? But I didn't have to sit there and go through hours and hours of actually hitting these drums, and I've done that before, and it's a very hard job. Like you can't just think, oh, I'm a drummer, I can go up and hit. Like, you require a drummer who know how to get a certain sound out of a drum. You can't just go, oh, I can play drums, it's fine.
I can hit a drum,
No, you need a drummer who knows, like, I have to hit it like this, with this angle, not just the velocity, but how to hit the drum. And me and Darby were talking about, like, okay, let's switch, the snare drum or a whole new kit. We were talking about at what angle should we hit this drum? At what angle or placement on the head does it sound the best to hit? It wasn't just that, oh, new kit,
it wasn't
go up
randomly
and hit it.
Hitting a drum. Yeah.
No. I have to be an expert at what I do, but I also think people oversee the fact that Darby has to be an expert at what he does. And the same thing with Alex Landenberg when I did the Duality 1 and 2 kits. Like, you have to have a drummer that you can talk with who also understands when I hit it like this, when I hit it like this. So me and Darby went through every drum and tried to find the best way to make it sound in a certain way. And then he had to replicate that on all velocities on,
but see,
variations and shit. Terrible.
Terrible. We joke about you guys messing around in the control room and doing whatever, but actually that's where you were really helpful for me, because I had to be extremely accurate. So we would get a level and I'd do 2 or 3 hits and they'd look at the waveform. That's the level we want. And he would let me know when I'd got what we were looking for. And then it was up to me to stick to that volume. And actually I was very a bit surprisingly how accurate I was with it. Because like you look at the waveforms, we start with the loud hits and go softer and softer and softer. And if you look at the waveforms on the thing, you know, they all have to be at each level pretty much the same hit. And I was very good at it, but you guys would be there. And if just I lost a bit of concentration, you'd be like, no, fraction louder, fraction softer. And then I'd get back on track. So yeah, you had to monitor what I was doing and just check that the sound that was coming out was what you were expecting to hear. What did we take? 10 days to do it?
I would say 12.
But I think I was there for 9 or 10.
Yeah, and I had like a couple of days of pre-work.
Yeah.
So, you know, preparing the drums and everything.
We were starting like 9:30 in the morning and going to like 8, 9 o'clock at night.
It was pretty taxing.
And in fact, the funny thing about the new one we've just done, we sampled my cowbell that I saved up for when I was about 10 years old, and I've had it for God knows how many years. And now that's in a Toontrack product, and like every time I hit it, I'm like, that's my cowbell I saved up for when I was 10. And it's made it into a Toontrack project, and I just think that's the coolest thing. It's immortalized now.
It's just not in the new one, is it?
It's the Ridge Rider, the LP Ridge Rider. It's the default cowbell. I made them make it the default cowbell, or I was going to quit the project. Sounds good though. It sounds great. And the thing is, actually, everyone jokes about cowbells, but recording a cowbell in that massive theatre was insane. They sound so good.
Huh.
Yeah. It's immortalized now.
All right, Darby, you want to talk about MIDI for a few?
Yeah, I love MIDI. MIDI's great.
Hit me with your MIDI pack products.
So I did British Invasion. Actually, that was a really hard pack to make because it was sort of based on all those old bands like, you know, The Animals and all that sort of stuff from back in the day. But the problem was, a lot of those, knowing MIDI packs, you've got to have all these variations of an intro, a verse, a chorus. So I always try and study the style of music I'm doing and try and get it as accurate as possible. But a lot of those bands, the drummers didn't really do that much, or the drummers weren't even that good. So they'd just play a beat and that was their vibe, and it was messy, but it worked for the music. So that was quite difficult to have to come up with, 30 variations for one song, when in reality a drummer probably played 2.
Right, you had to try and make it interesting for the sake of giving more content without spamming.
Exactly, and that pack was probably the hardest one I've done in that vibe. Actually, the first one I did that I'm really proud of is called Drum Beats, which went with it partnered with the Kick and Snares EZX. And that was really cool because unlike all the other packs where I've made songs, this was just about, right, you're going to make 5 reggae beats, 5 drum and bass beats, 5 dubstep beats, 5 metal beats, and it really allowed me to just go to town and play some absolutely ridiculous stuff and get away with it. So I'm actually really proud of that pack. That was the first one I did. And then I also did heavy rock grooves, drum grooves and fills inspired by heavy rock from the 70s through to today. So evidently I did that one as well. I did one called Modern Funk Grooves, drum grooves and fills inspired by modern funk and other related genres. I did that in conjunction with a bass player, an amazing English bass player called Lawrence Cottle. For every drum pattern, there's a bass pattern that goes exactly with it. That kind of made it twice as hard working with someone else to make sure that everything lined up.
A lot of users want that to happen though, and only so few packs actually do that.
I also did a bunch of MIDI that's included in the new Easy Drummer 3 core library. I think there were 3 drummers that played on that. I know I did it. Norman, the guy that works for Toontrack, he's a really cool player. He does a lot of their stuff. But I think they just had so much to get done that it was easier to farm out the parts. And also to give people, we all play differently, so it gives a wider spread of groove and feel.
Tell me anything that comes to mind about your first Toontrack gig.
The very first time I started working for Toontrack and they said I sent a couple of just things for them to check. I sent them over And, you know, I fixed a few bits and quantized a few bits, and they're like, you've quantized some of this, haven't you? And I was like, yeah, because, you know, I wanted to line it up a bit. And they're like, no, just play and leave it. So now I play the parts. The only things that I quantize are the downbeat of the start of every pattern, just to make sure it starts on the one, and then everything else is just left as I played it.
Especially with EZdrummer 3, the new quantizing features in the grid editor, we can all get it really close to the grid without it bullseyeing the grid. It's like, at this point, we want loose stuff because we can...
But that's when we come back to that thing. You can't add your feel, but you can take it away. So it's better to have your feel, and then if people want to take it away a bit and quantize it a bit, they can do that, but they can't add more Darby because they don't know how to. So if it was too quantized and they say, oh, I want more Darby, they can't have more Darby.
Yeah, I've even left little hiccups where I've made a slight stutter, or I just my sticks clicked or something and it wasn't perfect. I've left it in because, you know, it kind of adds character. And again, like Jake says, if that doesn't work for you, it's one button away from being fixed. I think like Jacob is, it's easier to strip stuff away than it is to add it in. So it's nice to give people, you know, some slightly more out there things that they can choose to use or strip back.
How are you utilizing drum software products?
I don't have like a template for mixing, and I don't do things the same way. Sometimes I only need a snare or a bass drum. Sometimes I use my own samples. And also, when I'm recording something and I know I'm gonna mix it, I usually know when I'm gonna use a sample, and then I create that sound in the session. Like I produce the sound for my own mixing. But, you know, usually I just pull up Superior Drummer, pull out a snare I want. And sometimes it's more than that. Like, it's so different. It's every situation is different, so I don't really have a workflow. Sometimes I use both.
How often are you using drum software, and specifically for what?
Aside from doing the MIDI and when people want me to record on V drums with Superior, sometimes I do recording sessions and I will add samples to my drums to augment them. And one thing I definitely have done a few times is steal like room mics or tails off, say, a snare drum from one pack and bounce them out and then blend them into mix with my own mixes, just to give a bit more size and width to my recordings. So that's quite a cool thing to do. So you're not using the transient of the drum, you're just using the tail and the room sound of it. I'm sure Jake's done that as well, right?
Yeah.
You're triggering a snare, let's just say in the Big Stage EZX, but when you're pulling the sounds out, you're just soloing up the room mics though. You just want to hear the aftermath of the transient.
Exactly, yeah. So and just to blend that in. So, you know, in my studio, I've got a nice sounding studio. Jake's got a nicer sounding studio, but sometimes, you know, both our studios don't get that desired effect that you want. And by taking something that has such a large tail to it, you know, sound tail, you can just blend it in and just really change the sound of your drum. And that's what I love about it. You know, you don't just have to take the whole hit and the whole transient or something. You know, it's like we were saying earlier, experiment with stuff, try stuff. Who cares if you're not meant to do it? It might just sound really, really cool.
You know, I think that workflow might be, you know, music to an amateur's ears.
Here's a cool thing I learned a while back. Say you're recording your acoustic drums, and, you know, you'd bus your snare drum to a reverb or something. If you trigger your snare drum so you've got a separate channel of just really well hit Superior sample hits or EZdrummer hits, you don't actually use those transients in the mix, but you send those to the reverb to get a nice even reverb on your snare. I learned that, and that was very cool.
Yeah.
I'll be giving that a shot a little later. Cool.
A one shot.
Hey everybody, thanks for joining Jacob, Darby, and I in this series. They already said their hellos and their goodbyes in the last video, so if you missed that episode, do check the description for a link to it. If you want to hear more from the Big Stage EZX, check out my overview video on my channel, and rock on.